preparing to live stream in a minute.
Good.
That's good. Right.
Good.
I love
All
how
right,
we get very quiet, right?
Yes, it's like everybody's waiting for the
Okay,
light.
we're ready.
Like,
Yeah. Right. I'm sharing now the live with our platforms. I'm ready when you. Oh, wonderful! She's already waiting for us. Okay, excellent. I'll just wait to see if she receives it. Otherwise, we are live. Right. This is exciting. We're gonna cover some really interesting stuff today about burnout. I like the most the part that there are some common false perceptions about burnout. So we're gonna uncover some of those truths.
yeah, it's interesting how over the years it has become a buzzword that became filled up with misconception the same way it became like that for mindfulness or meditation or any type of psychological diseases like, oh, I think I'm schizophrenic. Well, that's an image to something that is not really who you are, maybe. It's quite
Yeah, there's a big confusion between sometimes between burnout and clinical depression. That we know those are not the same. Even some of the signs could appear the same, but definitely. But I also agree with you that it's a question of the self-identity and the self-worth question is at stake many times.
Yeah, and also, you know, when do you dare to declare yourself burned out and to accept it is probably way down the line, way after you actually start to be depleted too much that you could be actually
I know I find myself even having a problem and I know all the things, you know. I'm like, I don't want, not me.
I think it's, yeah, you know, we all, I think I had a question one, like, when do we know we are approaching the line? And it's unfortunately through training, you basically fail enough so that you see the signs early on, just earlier, just before, and then a bit earlier, and then so earlier that you work on, you know, nurturing the well-being instead. But it's very hard to know theoretically where are your borders when you never learn to listen to yourself. It's complicated.
True, very true.
And as you said, Wilcox, we are all students of our teachings here. I don't think anybody could dare saying I'm an expert into taking care of myself. Well, we are doing the best we can, all of us.
Yeah, I want to welcome a few. I want to welcome a few people who are already joining us, and I'm so happy to see you commenting on the chat. So hi to Kevin and to Erica joining us from, I believe Kevin from Norway and Erica from the Bay Area. So happy to have you here joining our conversation. We are starting in just a minute, just checking that everything is working and that participants are joining us as we speak. Yeah.
So nice to cover the globe.
It is. It's always, well, we say I try that burnout is not even a local issue. It's a global phenomenon, cross-sectoral, cross-cultural. Perfect. So our live is working. Just got confirmation we are live. We're just waiting for other participants to join because we have 1 more minute. So let's give them this time. And if people are joining us and would like to present themselves on the chat and where they are connecting from, you are more than welcome to do it. We will start shortly. We just give a few more seconds for people to join us, to connect. We hope you can hear us well and see everything. Otherwise, say something in the chat. But other than that, we are live and we are starting shortly. All right, excellent. So I think we are starting now. We have everything set, everything in place. Team, are you ready?
Yeah.
Ready?
Ready.
Perfect. All right. So welcome everyone to our webinar today, taking a reality check on employee burnout status. We are excited to have you here. And the reason for it is not only because we are excited to talk about burnout prevention, but because we know that everyone who joins today are leaders who truly care about their people, their employee, their well-being, and leaders who, like we said here, dare to make an impact. So we are honored to have you here joining us today for this conversation. Who we are, let's present ourselves and where are we coming from. So we are Enkindle Global, a global organization dedicated to burnout prevention and cultivating well-being. Maybe we can see some about, yeah, perfect. So as you can see, we are focused on burnout prevention, cultivating well-being, and building emotional resilience. And if I might tell, we are also having quite a lot of fun doing that, as you can see from the photos here. We like doing things differently, and we're going to talk a little bit about it towards the end. We're going to spend together the next 25 minutes. With me co-hosting Deborah Rupert, our Nordic director at Enkindle Global, a PhD, a certified coach specializing in burnout prevention. Thank you for being here with me. And Wilcox Gwain, our program director at Enkindle Global, a strategic well-being expert specializing in participatory leadership processes. Thank you for joining me today. Myself, I am Davida Ginter, the CEO of Enkindle Global and author of the book Burning Out Won't Get You There. So as you can see, we are all quite invested in this topic of burnout prevention, committed to it. And this is exactly what we are about to focus on today in the next 25 minutes, and then some Q&As and conversations if you'd like to stay. We are going to talk about what burnout is. Let's share a definition. And from there, the real causes of employee burnout. Hint, workload, although within that list is not the main one, as one usually commonly think. And then from there, we're going to cover the costs, both the straightforward and the hidden costs for companies that their staff is burning out. We're going to share with you an evaluation tool, a stress check tool that you can actually take, use, implement. This is our gift to you, the value that we want to share with you today. And of course, the main part. So how do we prevent burnout? And how do we do it strategically, systemically, in a way that actually addresses the core issues? So this is our agenda for today. And we are ready to dive right in.
Great. So we're going to start with the definition of burnout according to the World Health Organization. And they describe it as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. In May of 2019, they included it in the International Classification of Diseases as an occupational phenomenon, but it is not a medical condition. It is characterized by three things: energy depletion or exhaustion, mental distance or feelings of cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. So according to a 2019 Gallup study that asked, how often do you feel burned out at work? Only 4% answered never. 20% answered rarely, 48% answered sometimes, 21% answered very often, and 7% answered always. That means that nearly 8 out of 10 employees on the job experience burnout sometimes. But in another survey, they go on to in detail to describe employees who are experiencing burnout at work are 63% more likely to take a sick day. They are 23% more likely to visit the emergency room, 13% more likely to be less confident in their performance, and 2.3 times as likely to leave their current employer. And that is not good for any of us. However, we do know that workplace burnout is reduced to near zero among engaged, high well-being employees who also work in a culture that honors individual strengths. So let's look at what does cause burnout.
So when it comes to the causes of burnout, there is this feeling that usually the weight is put on the individual, that the individual struggles to handle their stress and that the stress mainly comes from workload. However, the reality is that the causes of burnout are actually shared between the individual and the organization. Both carry a responsibility of what can generate and lead to staff burnout. And the causes are actually very diverse. Workload is one of them, but for example, a culture of overtime, being individual, societal, or within the company, may cause burnout. You may have staff that are ill-suited for the position. You may have staff that lack proper training to the position they are doing, can have a lack of stress management skills, unrealistic or misunderstood expectations, both from the employee, the management team, the managers, different levels of the scale. You can have interpersonal conflict that weigh down the energy, a feeling of being disenfranchised where you don't have control over the situation and don't feel heard. Misalignment of values, values of the employee, values of the organization, what they say they stand for and how they make it happen in reality. A lack of trust within the team or to the whole organization. A lack of support, and support can be technical or emotional. The feeling of not being safe to ask for help. And overall, it could be a lack of meaningful contribution. So as you can see, there are so many ways to have causes of burnout. And we actually experienced this interesting combination of different causes with one of our last clients, where they came in and asked us, we have very high stress levels in our company and we have a COVID problem. I mean, our staff is really stressed about COVID. And we said, okay, but what we do first is to engage the employees and ask them, what's going on? What stresses you? And it actually turned out when we opened the conversation that what caused burnout was actually a combination of a lack of support, a misunderstanding of the expectations. There was a lack of stress management skills and a lack of trust. So as you can see, at the end of the day, COVID wasn't the problem. There were deeper holistic problems in the company that we addressed. So if there are so many causes, what are the costs of burnout?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the cost for a minute, because this is really important to understand the effects of the problem on companies. And let me tell you, companies pay a lot of money directly and indirectly because of staff burnout. First and foremost, let's talk about absenteeism. So when we say absenteeism, it's the situation when an employee don't show up to work. And it has been found that in many cases, it is related to the emotional situation, to mental health, to emotional stress. just look at the data. We have found many examples. We just gave one from Canada. Canadian companies lost yearly $16.6 billion due to workers' absentees. This is astonishing. And when you add to that sick leave, that's already the next one, but it's added up. The sick leave and illness day, time off from work, it adds up to higher costs. Now, moving on to the next point on our list is increased accidents and mistakes. When employees are stressed out, overwhelmed, and burnt out, they're obviously more likely to make professional mistakes, but also on-site accidents, which of course has a cost in health. It could even cost people's lives. And from there, we want to talk about productivity. Now, I'm going to pause here for a minute on this very, very important point. Not just because we all love to talk about productivity and to measure it, but mainly because apparently this is one of the most costly items in burnout for companies. So what happens, this problem has a name, it's called presenteeism. And it refers to employees who actually do show up to work while they are emotionally or physically not well. So you have someone showing up to work. Maybe they were shying away from saying they feel sick. Maybe they're not even aware of the problem, but they show up to work, they underperform, productivity reduced significantly, and companies apparently lose tons of money. Just look at this data. Just one example from the United States. $150 billion yearly spent because staff was burning out and was not even necessarily aware of it. So I want us to pay close attention to that one. Now, moving on to the next item in this list of costs is decreased retention, especially for high achievers. So if someone is approaching burnout, even if they are really good at what they do, they will not stay in that position or in this workplace, and companies lose a lot of money to when people leave or when they need to qualify a new person for the position. Next is, of course, the cost of development and training when we have problems. So instead of investing the money on time to prevent burnout, we reach to a point where we need to invest in emergency training because we have problems now that we need to fix, because we have employees who are burning out, staff that is, like we said, underperforming, not functioning well. And from there, naturally, let's talk about innovation. Now, what's the connection? When someone, anyone, a person, but obviously an employee, is at the verge of burnout, they are in a survival mode, and you can't harness your innovation capacity. You can't create, you can't think outside of the box when you're in a survival mode. And companies, when they're not innovative, they can't lead the market. This is obviously how it costs them a lot of money when staff is burning out in that, with that relates. Now, lastly, I want to touch upon decreased communication. Now, by itself, it doesn't have a financial cost. We can say that, of course, it has a cost on the relationship. But when the communication is broken, when we are lacking trust, there's time wasted on conflicts. So it costs companies the wasted time that we put on fixing those conflicts instead of doing our work. Let it sink for a minute. Just take a look at this overview of costs and see how it's well worth to invest in prevention of burnout rather than paying this high price. All right, moving on. It begs the question, of course, how can we tend to the real issues? We understand the problem now, right? So what can we do with it? How can we first evaluate the burnout status of our staff?
So it's important to know what your current reality is. What is happening with your employees within your company? There's no way of knowing unless you ask them directly and do some kind of evaluation. So here at Enkindle Global, we encourage everyone to work. It's all right. We encourage everyone to work in a strategic way, right? And so here we offer you a free survey. And this is what we would like to have you start a conversation with your employees. This is not a data-driven survey. It is a way to get some insight into what the levels of stress is and the potential stressors are for your employees. And this will be available to you in an email shortly following. I think it actually comes tomorrow. But if you want to get at it right away and start evaluating as soon as possible, you can get it on our website at enkindleglobal.com. So the obvious question is, can burnout be avoided? Absolutely. Yes, it can. So let's look at then, how do we do that? How do we prevent burnout?
So to talk about prevention of burnout, we think it's important to first address the biggest misconception when it comes to burnout prevention. So as we said, burnout is caused by stress. And when we put stress as the big problem, it becomes that stress is bad, which means that to prevent burnout, we need to remove stress and all the stressors. So the direct conclusion that most companies often take is that in order to redress stress, we are going to offer our staff wellness practices. So that would mean stress management, a very nice chair, some vouchers to go to the gym, and even medical and psychological support. And all of those solutions are very valid. However, we might tend to take, this emergency, picking up whatever option of wellness may suit on the spot, but that will not address all the causes of burnout we mentioned before. Because what if burnout is caused by a combination of a lack of trust and interpersonal conflict and a culture of overtime? Suddenly, the yoga retreat may not solve all the problems that your company is facing. However, if we start to approach both the individual and their skills and working on the organizational culture so that we have a holistic approach of the causes and the understanding of where burnouts come from, then we can design solutions that are tailor-made to the situations at hand. And such a combination could be, for example, stress management techniques combined with proper support to the staff and adequate training and working on the culture to support feeling safe to ask for help. So how do we do this holistic approach?
That is the question, isn't it? And the good news is that because it's holistic, well-being is contagious. And that means that we can positively influence from the system, within the system, on the system. So leaders affect the team and vice versa. And that's good news. And that means that if we're going to approach it holistically, we can also approach it strategically. So how do we do it? Let's say a few words about it. This is what we actually want to share with you today. We want to really show you our process. Whether you get our support or not, it doesn't matter. We really want to encourage you to do it strategically when you approach well-being and burnout prevention. So just as you have strategies for everything else in your business, and I know you do, right? You wouldn't treat your finance or your marketing or your customer base without a proper strategy in place. You can have a strategy for well-being, and it makes total sense to have a plan to treat your employee well-being, right? Just like you do everything else. How do you do it? This is exactly what we're going to share with you today now. We're going to give you an overview of this plan, and if you need our support, you know where to reach us. So you start by assessing the current reality. What do I mean by that? Don't just sit there and meditate on the problem. Engage your employees, ask them. Seriously, take your employees, ask them what's going on. What are the needs? What are the challenges? What are the stressors? So when I shared this just a few days ago, someone told me, oh, but it requires a high level of trust in the organization. And said, what if it's the other way around? What if when we ask them and engage them, it builds trust? So this is what we want to encourage you to do, to engage your employees in this question and assessment of the current reality of the needs, stress, or challenges. Now we're going to challenge you because we're going to ask you to put that aside for a few moments, because now you're going to envision an ideal situation in which well-being is fully incorporated in your work culture, in your organization, in your DNA of your company. So envision that. How does it look like? How does it feel like? Go bold, go wide. And now, when you have the vision, you know where you're going, you have a compass, right? And you have the current reality. All you need to do is to bridge that gap. I'm saying all you need to do, it's not that simple, but it's clear. At least it's clear, right? You need to put a strategic plan to bridge that gap. But now at least you know where you're going, where you're coming from. Now, the way we do it is that the strategic planning incorporates setting guidelines that we want to follow. Brainstorming, this is the fun part, when we brainstorm for actions and solutions, and the wilder, the better. But these are no longer random solutions. As Deborah mentioned before, how do we know that they fit? Because we know what are our needs and where we are going. So those actions make sense. And now you have a well-structured strategic process leading you towards the vision of fully incorporated well-being in your company or organization. Now, I want to add another point, which is really important to us. We want to encourage you to measure the success, to define the success and measure it, just like I said before, just like you measure everything else in your organization. Because if you measure it, it gets done. You have your eyes on it. You know where you're heading. You can measure that. You know you're going to do it. And we also want to encourage you, if we can challenge you just a bit, please don't be afraid to redefine success in a way that truly incorporates well-being for your company. We all have this definition of success, right? Productivity, key performance indicators, but what about well-being? It could be part of your definition of success. So we want to encourage you to take it and go bold and make well-being your priority in that sense. All right, what else can we share with you today that will help you and support you with well-being? Wilcox, what else do we have?
We have a strategic plan, and we cannot emphasize enough how important it is that we start with the wisdom of the employees, because no strategic plan is one size fits all. To be able to make it work, we need to work systemically with everyone involved to make sure that the solutions fit perfectly. And that's what we do. We work in a systematic way to make that happen. And most importantly, that's in a co-creative fashion that doesn't rely on implementing initiatives or using blanket solutions. We really want to use a participatory practice methodology that evokes the wisdom from within and creates unique solutions for the company. Here you can see us, again, having a good time with working with Zoom, which has been new in this COVID world as it is, but like we're bringing both strategy and fun together. But what is so important with the participatory practice is that each voice is heard. And we create that solution and it impacts the company deeply. Because we start with questions, thought-provoking questions that dig deep below the surface, that brings us to an understanding of what's actually happening. And that is a process of going into an intersystems understanding. We'll do an analysis with the team so that we understand how the various systems are impacting each other. What is actually causing the stress? How do we make solutions to change that in the systems that are what's operating? Sticky notes, etc. Right? These are various interactive processes that we do with the team that will get them standing up, get them active, interactive, and then also deeply listening to themselves. And that will create a deep engagement, right? There is no other way of getting at it besides diving into the human beings to create that human process. And we do it together. we achieve much deeper solutions when it is done together, right? So that includes holistic thinking in everything that we do, the layers of a person, the layers of the team, the layers of the organization, and how the organization fits into the whole system that it operates in. We have personal investment. Because it's their solutions, they're invested because it's answering the questions that they want. And throughout this whole process, it's strategic. Every process that we work with at Enkindle Global has a purpose and a reason for it that leads us to change and radical change. And did I mention that it's fun? Because it is fun.
It is. And the beautiful part is that we can see results. So it's not, of course, just fun. We can see results. Here's one example. We always ask tons of questions before and after. We ask one of our participants that were a management team training with us last summer. We asked them, are you able to adapt when change occurs? We basically wanted to test resilience, right? And prior to the training, many of them said a moderate amount, many said a lot, but very few said a great deal. Well, after the training, 6 weeks later, it has shifted so beautifully to see that way more people from the management team feel a great deal of ability to adapt when change occurs. And if to put it with words, we wanted to share one beautiful sentence that a team leader shared with us. It's in the next slide. So she felt very stressed before the training, but after that, she wrote to us, this experience helped me a great deal to look at situations from a broader perspective and practice business empathy. Her words, we were amazed by this term, business empathy, for my team and understand their stressors. And we got so excited to reading this because we felt that the effect has been rippled. She is a team leader bringing this, remember we said well-being is contagious. She brought that influence, that impact to her team. So it was really heartwarming. We want to invite you. We want to share an invitation with you to explore how can we support your work. We have a full training that you can explore in our website, which is called, surprise, Strategic Wellbeing for Organizations. You can find it under Enkindle Global or Enkindle Global/Strategic Wellbeing for Organizations. Get on a call with us. Let's see how can we support you with part of the process or the full process. We are here for you. Here's how you can connect with us. You can email us at hi@enkindleglobal.com or join or check our website. We're on LinkedIn active. You can take a screenshot now if you want to find a way to connect with us. And mainly, finally, and this is the most important thing, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for prioritizing your employee well-being, hopefully your well-being as well in that process. We are the change that we want to see in the world. Thank you for joining us. We actually finished the formal part, the knowledge part, but we do want to stay around and collect questions and comments and or thoughts, everything you want to share with us on the chat. So we are here for you. Thank you also, team, for co-hosting with me. Let's look at your questions now. Let's see what's coming up. All right, we have one in the Q&A saying very important and educative event. I want to add, the culture has to be a strategy also, yes, because well-being needs to be a pillar in the company culture. Oh, I couldn't agree more, and measured. I suggest to look into the 7 pillars of company culture. I've added some new pillars, well-being, to them. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Eduardo, connecting from Norway, for this beautiful input. And yeah, I think we can fully agree that it is a pillar in the culture, and it means that we address it and not just looking at it as a nice to have. You know, this is an important part of what we do in any organization. Thank you. Let's see if we have any more questions now. But we want to thank you